Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. All I'm saying, next time, bring the evidence. All you do, you come here, corruption. Just here. Next time you come, bring your stuff. I am not talking about that. I'm talking about you in 2024, December, saying there's corruption. Bring it.
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, for an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right. The right that someone has. All of our rights exist in context.
What is the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you disrespected the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Pleasant Friday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard. As you can see from our screen, who our guests are, they need no introduction. Consultant in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, or more or less a technical consultant, is Ruel Johnson. And of course, the man, the financial hand, or the financial mind, or simply put, financial analyst Ruel Bhagwandin. There's a lot going on in Guyana as we head to the finishing line. There is just over a month to go before the election campaign concludes, and on September the 2nd, we will get the results. But between now and then, a lot has happened and more will happen. As we are speaking this Friday evening, I cannot speak for the other three persons to my left, but I believe and I know that there's nothing evidential or any proof about a rumor that is circulating that this minister, that minister has been sanctioned by the US government. I can't understand how people could say something that there was an earthquake in some country in South America and there was no earthquake. How you expect people to believe you the next day, the next week? Anyway, perhaps we will touch on that. We go alphabetically, so we start with Ruel Bhagwandin. And of course, you know, in the air they talk about the Morala Bank that have severed relation with 5 high-level persons in Azzuddin Mohammed's party win. And I am told that another bank shortly will be following the Morala Bank. So let's talk about that and over to finance man Ruel Bhagwandin.
Thank you, Freddie. So let me deal with the question by responding to a couple of things that the affected parties alleged at their late evening or early evening press conference to tell the country that they lose some bank account and they don't know for what reason. Now these individuals have chosen to be part of a political entity to contend an election, a national election, to hopefully form part of a government, or if they lose, they will form the opposition and therefore have a role to play in the legislature, the National Assembly, as members of Parliament, whereby they will have their job description would entail passing of bills, debating bills, which will ultimately be passed into legislation. And they have to be knowledgeable about these sort of existing legislation. They have to be knowledgeable about these things. And clearly they are not. Now, Guyana enacted an anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism law in 2009. That law came about in around that time, 07, 08, 09, well, enacted here in 2009. It stemmed from an international convention. It stemmed from an international framework of anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism globally. This is a global piece of legislation that governs and regulates the financial system to protect the global financial system from money laundering and facilitating terrorist financing. And so it's an international framework. It is an international legal and regulatory framework through which we are an open economy. We are not a closed economy. We are not isolated from the rest of the world. We are integrated into the global economy. We are integrated into the global financial system. And that integration, which in order to allow the international payments, capital flow between borders, across borders, international payments for imports and capital flows, private capital flow, foreign direct investment, external borrowing, it goes through the payment system, which is the banking system. Our local banking system is connected through what is called through a network of correspondent banking relationships in the United States, in other parts of the world, to facilitate payments in other jurisdictions, such as Asia and so on. So it's a network of international banking relationship, which is referred to as correspondent banking relationship. So once you are an economy that is so integrated into the rest of the world, you are subject to these international regulations, and that's how this law came about. So that's a little bit of background. Now, if you read this AML-CFT Act, AML is the acronym for anti-money laundering. So for the flow of discussion, I'll use the acronym AML-CFT. If you read the AML-CFT Act and the regulations thereunder, there's a number of regulations that flow under that piece of legislation, that financial institutions as well as cambio dealers have to, and other financial institutions have to abide by.
Remittance agencies, for example.
And in that law, it categorizes customers based on risk profile. There are 3 risk categories. The risk categories are high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And the law prescribes who would constitute a high risk customer. It prescribed who would constitute a medium risk customer, and it prescribed who would constitute a low risk customer. Based on your risk profiling, that is the level of due diligence that the bank would so apply in terms of compliance with the law. So obviously a low risk customer or a medium risk would not be subject to the same level of scrutiny and due diligence as the high risk customer. Now the question is, who are likely to be categorized as high risk customers? The high risk customers are gold miners, cambio dealers, auto dealers, high net worth individuals and families, and politically exposed persons. So a politician, and the law defines who is a politically exposed person. And this definition applies to politicians who are on the government side, or what we would want to say the governing party or the ruling party, So the president and all his ministers and all the political appointees of heads of agencies, they are under, by way of the definition of a politically exposed person, they are classified as high risk under that framework. Opposition politicians are also politically exposed persons. Now, politically exposed persons are subject to enhanced due diligence.
Joel, I think just so clarity for the audience, right? Because you said opposition, it should be noted that you don't have to be an elected opposition. So
once
you are in a party.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Yes, yes, I'm coming to that. So
maybe that background we could come to the Demerara Bank thing.
Yes, I'm coming to the Demerara Bank thing, because the question is why the bank. So I'm giving you I'm giving you the legal basis and the framework in which the regulatory framework. I'm explaining the regulatory framework. So, as Ruel correctly says, not just the existing opposition in parliament, but also political parties that are contending and that are contesting an election. And so, by virtue of participating in an election, all those political parties who would have participated, they have been approved, their symbol is approved, they passed the nomination, their activity, their lists were approved, they now are under that law. If they were not part of such an organization before, by virtue of them now subjecting themselves to that, participating in that, putting their names on a list, they have now become a politically exposed person formally. And this is by way of definition. And if you read the definition, it is not only those persons. The law states clearly, in very clear language, that their family members, their family members and close associates. And Ghana is a small society. Everybody knows who are your close associates. Yeah. So that is by definition.
Everybody knows who's who.
Yeah.
Good. So that is by definition, you are a PEP, and this is the definition for a PEP. And you don't have to take my word. You could go and pull down the law, the legislation. It's on the Bank of Ghana website and read it. The definition is on the first 3 or 4 pages in the act. Yeah. Now, so why these individuals? So the question now arises, naturally so. So then why this political party? Why is certain political party was singled out and not the others?
All PP. Yeah.
And the answer to that is very simple and straightforward. By virtue of being a PEP, which means you're high risk, it doesn't automatically prevent you or prohibit you from doing your normal transactions. It's just a matter of risk classification, that under this international framework, which we have adopted in our country, we had to adopt in our country, that you're subject to enhanced due diligence or heightened scrutiny. So you can go about your business as per normal, but you would not know if Ruel is a politician and 2 years before he became a politician, his transaction in the bank is of a certain threshold, is of a certain frequency, and is of a certain value. And the moment he becomes a politician, let's say he's a minister, it is public knowledge what his salary would be as a minister. And if after that there are unusual transactions in his account, then the bank, that would be flagged. And they will then, depending on their internal risk assessment, they could do two things. The bank could file a suspicious transaction report with the Financial Intelligence Unit, and he will know, they won't tell him. It depends on their assessment whether they have reasonable grounds to file that suspicious transaction, or if they have more compelling evidence.
Let's talk about
if they have more compelling, I'm explaining how the risk assessment is done, because I want people to understand this as a trained banker myself. So if the bank determines that there is compelling evidence that they have gathered that it warrants more than just filing a report, they can decide to terminate that relationship. They can decide to do so. So it's depending on the risk assessment. So the other politically exposed persons, they're subject to that, but they're allowed to do their transactions as per normal. The bank would not call him or tell him anything. The difference here, however, the differentiation here with this 5-person is that they have chosen to be part of a political party that is founded by and led by an OFAC-sanctioned individual. An OFAC sanction is the most severe financial sanction internationally that you can be subjected to for money laundering. And that is the difference. That is the difference. If you do a Google search, there is only 17,000 individuals and entities that have been sanctioned by OFAC. And you can verify that from OFAC database, which is publicly accessible. These are two individuals. This is an individual in Ghana who is in that 17,000 out of 7+ billion people in the world. 8 billion people in the world. So this is not something that we must take lightly. This is a very serious matter. This is a sanction specifically in relation to money laundering. So it is precisely for that reason, because of the OFAC sanction. You would recall that the moment the OFAC sanction was made public, that ruling was handed out, all the banks immediately terminated their relationship with that entity to de-risk their system. Otherwise, they would have been subjected to implications, and the risk is losing their correspondent
before
banking.
He comes in, do you think other banks are going to follow?
They will. They naturally will. They naturally will. It's just a matter of time, and based on, we don't know where the other people have their accounts, but all the banks, they would ultimately have to conduct their internal risk assessment, and they will have to act accordingly in accordance with their determination.
Okay.
Right? So it is because of that, while these individuals are arguing that, they have not been sanctioned, well, you have chosen to be associated, and the act defines a PEP is somebody who you associate. So by way of association, that is why you are now a risk. You are now a high risk to the bank.
A quick interjection before you come in, Ruel. A quick interjection. You don't only have to be on a list as long as you hold senior membership in a political party.
Yeah.
Right.
So once your political party is accepted to run, you may not be on the list, but you're active and senior member in the party.
Yeah.
You will also be termed a politically exposed person because you have access to the politician.
Yeah.
Right, Ruel.
Yeah, so I just want to modify or add for the contextualize what Joel said. So a good example is you can contrast two people who are known to have had their accounts closed by Demerara Bank. One, well, let's say two, but it's really three. One is Natasha Singh Lewis.
And she was with the PNC, she was a parliamentarian.
So Natasha Singh Lewis has always been a politically exposed person, but she's prior was a politically exposed person who still had a bank account.
Right.
She lost her account. Somebody who, this woman who I think she lives in Barbados, who's a new candidate, who's now chosen to, I think for the first time, to throw her hat in the ring. She had her bank account closed by the Demerara Bank as well. So it's a new politically exposed person and a former politically exposed person who did not invite that level of financial institution sanction. So the common thing there is this particular list, and no other person on any other list has been subject to those. And we've had Static News and other reports that says that other banks will follow suit. The key thing is that the full candidate lists have not been released as yet. But as soon as they're released, the banks now have a list of people upon whom they will conduct their due diligence, and it may not apply to everybody. As Joel said, there are a couple of factors. One would include not necessarily in themselves suspicious transactions, but anomalous transactions. So if it is that for 5 years you've been depositing $40,000 per month, and then suddenly you start depositing $200,000, that is a red flag for the bank.
Save and accept. Save and accept if it is legitimate. You can substantiate by way of documentation. Save and accept.
Exactly. Yeah.
But before Leonard, Craig.
But one other clarification quickly. Even if, because people will take this and run with it, even if other banks do not go and execute that drastic measure of closing, terminating the accounts, they will have, I can guarantee you and assure you that even if they didn't go that route, that your account is internally reassessed. You now gone from low to high risk, so you're flagged. So you've gone in a different profile according to their compliance procedures. And the moment any irregular activities and you can't justify it, you will ultimately be subject to the same thing. So not because some others, their accounts may not have been closed with other banks as yet, it means that they are safe. No, they would not know internally that one bank, based on their risk assessment, which they have a right to, based on their internal compliance, applying the same law. You can apply the same law, but you could take into account different factors. Another bank could take into account different factors. But the common denominator is that all of them would have been reclassified as high risk in the bank, and all those accounts will be on strict monitoring.
But before Leonard come in, it just this just has been stimulating in my mind. If the other banks follow them, will have a bank, could there be a collapse of wind? None of us are lawyers here, but I'm wondering if people being sanctioned, and those sanctioned people saying, "Look, I'm finished. I'm not." Could wind collapse before
elections? No, I think that I think it's two separate things. You see, first of all, and I'm not sure what the procedure is, but for now, those names are locked in on the list.
You can't withdraw your name. You can't.
I am not sure at this point you
withdrawal?
can. You can't do it at this point in time, as far as I know. However, again, that's it wouldn't constitute a collapse of the party core, because a list usually is core party, except perhaps for a massive party like the PPP or the PNC. It's usually primarily core party people with additional people added on, as opposed to small parties, which the party core is very small, and then everybody else on the list, the majority list is made up of people who don't necessarily have any party institutional place, etc. So the party core will continue. The momentum as it is will continue, except to say that this is an incredible credibility blow to any political entity.
Leonard?
One other quick clarification. The general standard around the world is that even after you have left the party and all of that, for 1 year, you could still remain in that thing, and people have been known to remain in that risk bracket for longer, especially if they continue to be able to, in the news, seen as being able to broker power, or exist in the power corridors. Even though you leave your political party, you may still not be taken off of that list.
Once it is you are seen to wield any sort of influence.
Right.
And it extends, by the way, and I can give a personal example, it extends, by the way, to the ability to send or receive
Yeah.
remittances.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
I think that happened with Abin Hutton.
Yeah,
Yeah, and even Michael Carrington, I don't know if you could remember,
Carrington told
he
us
said
that.
he had to write the bank and say, I'm no longer parliamentarian. And then the bank wrote back and say, but you're a
still
senior member of the
AFC.
of the AFC. So, so that is an additional context.
Yes.
Well, let's talk some hard politics. We are seeing what's happening. One of the first phenomena I would like to hear your view on is large amounts of Afro-Guyanese are moving around, and the movement is tending to move away from the PNC, APNU, and people are going to the PPP. A lot are going to WIN. And some people are even part of the smaller parties, Brooms, Amanzo, and so on.
Yeah.
Just give us your thoughts.
Oh, well, it's interesting you asked that. So let me do a shameless plug right now. I mean, what I've been doing is, Facebook is a good forum, etc. But I've moved much of the sort of analysis I've engaged into a web portal called Inside GY, and scheduled for beginning of Emancipation Month, because I think thematically it's relevant. I will be looking at exactly that question. But in summary, what you've had is, for decades, you've had the encapsulation of Afro-Guyanese political sense of self within one party, the PNC, primarily within one party. That party has been disintegrating. And when that happened, I mean, because we've had this sort of ethno-political conflict, some people know, because the PPP, and you have to give them credit for this, has diversified itself, particularly post-2015. So this is why you see people like Tandai McAllister, James Bond, etc., moving towards PPP.
Leonard Craig.
Leonard Craig. But Leonard wasn't PNC per se.
Or PNC.
Right? Somebody like Leonard, it's a logical decision.
Ruel Johnson.
Well, I'm not. I've never been a member of any party, but I mean, logically, I support the PPP as present because I believe it's the best thing, but not from an ethnocentric perspective. However,
so David Hines going to call you, you know what?
I don't. Well, but I'm glad you brought that up. So there's been this pressure, and it comes with the Hines comments, etc. But the PNC has been unable, because of the absence of leadership, and also because of the crisis of credibility that came post 2020 with the attempted rigging of elections. I mean, the reality is that in this sort of ethnocentric polarization, people think that people will accept anything from anybody.
Yeah.
That has not been the case. There are people who saw the bullshit for what it was and said, I want no part of it. The problem is that for the bulk of them, because of this sort of infinity party. So why they've gone to, what they've notably also, and this is critical, they have not gone to the AFC. Even though when Hughes ascended, formally that is, to the leadership of the party, the public formal leadership of the party, there was a very direct appeal, couched in usually flowery language, to this African base. For example, when it is that he said that the ancestors informed his re-entry into politics. And then there was shortly after that the association with and bringing in this lady, Marjorie Cars, who wrote this seminal book on the 1763 rebellion. Right? There was this attempt to associate himself with Kofi and all that. That failed. There's a deficit of trust. Both the AFC and the AFC suffers more. That's a deficit of trust. what you've seen in these smaller parties, and let's start with, say, Forward Movement Guyana. That's a PNC splinter party, as is Broom's party. I did an article on Insight in which I spoke to the ethnic sort of duality that most parties aim for with regard to the Prime Minister and presidential post. If you notice with Forward Movement Guyana, you have 3 Afro-Guyanese.
Yeah.
Walton, Vipa guy,
presidential candidate,
and then they have Nigel London, who's the Prime Minister candidate. So there is a
deficit of multiracial.
a deficit of diversity, but also there is a very clear symbolic consolidation of speaking to trying to capture this, get the sheep back into the fold. But finally, and I think this is critically important, the party that's attracted the mass of the PNC's lost flock is ironically Win. And people tend
including David Hines' daughter.
Well, I'll get to that. So people tend to focus on the fact, and this is very clear, that a large number of working class persons, some paid, but others not. I think the majority not, have started to flock to Win. Because, I mean, there are no policies, but there's this emotive, bland thing that people could get. It's red meat. However, you also have people like Tabitha Sarabu Haley, who is Hines' stepdaughter, her husband, both of whom have in the past expressed very strong Afro-representative sentiments, who have now sort of subsumed themselves into this bland.
Were you forgetting Adriana Young's auntie?
She does
strongly ethnic in her pronouncement. She's with Win.
Yeah, but then you have people who you don't notice on the list. There is this very bright guy who was critical in shaping the post 2015 pre-elections 2015 image of Granger, Coach McPherson. He was the photographer.
He's with Win?
Yeah, he's on the Win's list. Then you have somebody like this very bright, very intelligent woman, Marjorie McCaskey.
Yeah, she's with Win too.
Who was Marjorie McCaskey?
Okay.
And she is on the Reparations Committee, National Reparations Committee.
Yeah.
I want to tell all three of you something that nobody's talking about in this country when we talk about PNC people leaving.
Yeah.
There is the economic advisor to the opposition leader and the central committee member of the PNC that nobody has heard about the past 2 months.
Who?
Low?
Yeah, where is he?
No, he was. So it was interesting. It was interesting.
Nobody's here.
No. He's been. So what's been interesting is that I noted where you noted. I think so.
He's invisible.
I know. I said, and I put something on Facebook. What happened to this guy? The very next day.
Yeah, he
had him on an interview. The very next day, he had him on an interview, and then he disappeared.
But what I want to ask Joel and you, this young man here has been demonized. Every African that go over. We even, honestly, I couldn't believe Michael Carrington, who I've known for donkey years, would espouse that theory too. Everyone that crosses over and sees something positive in the Guyana government, you're a soup drinker. Now, I see on the online edition of Starbook News, people have said constantly, I'm a soup drinker. Joel Bhagwandin and Ruel Johnson. I got my salary in the form of a pension from NIS and UG and my wife. I get not 1 cent from the state, from the ruling PPP, from the government of Guyana, and not 1 cent from the Guyana Chronicle. My point is, why as a human, you can't see your country going in a certain direction that you want to go in, especially your parents, and you support that direction, why you have to be a soup drinker?
Oh, yeah, so-
How could human beings
No,
be so indecent?
No, it's because it's for a couple of things. One, first of all, many of the people, and irony is that as many of the people who claim to represent Afro-Guyanese interests can only think of Afro-Guyanese free will in transactional terms. Afro-Guyanese political choice in transactional terms. So if it is that you choose to represent something, or if you choose to not represent their interests, then there must be some transaction that is fueling that, as opposed to logic, as opposed to personal agency. I remember in the middle of the 2020 campaign, when we started TCI. And,
the Citizen Initiative.
Citizen Initiative. We started TCI. The logic was clear. There needed to be more active participatory citizenship. That was our thing. Because we were not, and I was not, although I had firmly supported, and worked to get the APNO AFC into office, there was an entire fiction created that I was on Mercury's payroll. And you had who I thought to be logical people repeating that fiction and spreading it as if it were fact. It wasn't because that the government was clueless and increasingly autocratic. And it wasn't the case wherein I was saying that I was supportive of the PPP. In fact, I was saying the opposite. I was saying that I, at the point in time, did not trust any of the major parties. But because of saying that independent down the middle, having that independent down the middle stance, a fiction was created that I was being paid by the PPP. So, in essence, the logic was that I was being paid by the PPP to oppose the coalition, even though I was opposing the PPP. So I was paying by the PPP to oppose the PPP. But that sort of illogic comes out of this. Two things: the general ethnic conflict that we have, but also the people who, you call them Creole middle class, I call them Afro-Saxon. The people who purport to represent Afro-Guyanese interests the most can only think of Afro-Guyanese agency, self-determination in terms of being bought and sold.
Joel, let me take off your financial analyst hat and let me put on a political cap on you. Say something about the politics that is going on right now. Throw away that financial analyst hat you have on. You put it on back later.
Quickly, let me just be direct with a question. I asked Ruel about the African component and the movement and mobility. Why do you think East Indian people, in your general analysis, if you could answer this, why do you think East Indian people have not, at least in this term, because in 2011 we saw them, at least in Region 6, were highly mobile to the AFC. Why do you think they're sticking with the PPP in this term here?
There is a straightforward answer and there is a complicated answer. Let me give you the straightforward answer. The straightforward answer is that the PPP lost the election in 2015. They regrouped. They acknowledged that they have made some mistakes. They sought to correct it. They rebuild the party from the ground up. They worked hard. They went to the electorate with a list of commitments vis-a-vis the manifesto. They came in, they were elected. They came into power under difficult circumstances. They came into power after a 5 months electoral impasse, attempt to transparently rig an election. Then there was COVID.
September violence in Cotton Tree.
Right. There was COVID-19 pandemic. People, over 20,000 persons were out of a job. Not naturally, but as a result of the APNO's policies. and they came into power, they assumed government, and they hit the ground running, and they delivered and exceeded their manifesto promises. Albeit there are some challenges, there are some limitations, there are always limitations, but largely they have successfully delivered on those promises. Hence, as the term Ruel used, it's the logical thing to do. They've had an opportunity to experience 2015, 2020. This was a mistake. Those who supported them, they were betrayed, they were lied to. They put back the PPP delivered, and there is no reason, there is no material reason, no reason of materiality to not put them back in power. The complicated answer is, I now want to juxtaposition the complicated answer with the other party, the sanctioned party. I don't want to give them, attribute that word to them.
It'll be an irony post September 1st, but yeah.
The complicated answer now is a little bit away from the straightforward answer to the question, is that, as Ruel acknowledged or pointed out, that there are some paid persons and there are some persons who are not paid. They just subscribe to this party. And I say this because moments ago, before we started this program, I'm part of the private sector BSOs, and there was one member in that private sector who made certain comments that was illogical to me and irrational, that made me think, we're living in parallel worlds, because you don't have to have a case study, you don't need to do an academic assignment to go and study Venezuela, what happened with Venezuela. We saw what happened. We experienced a lot of these things ourselves. We have our own case studies. Yet you have some persons, a group of persons who are prepared to put this country at risk, with all the risk that we've talked about and that is there, and it's not an academic exercise. Yet you have a group of persons who are prepared to put this country at risk by supporting that party, and don't care whether that party gets a seat or two in the National Assembly. But if that, God forbid, if that is to happen and the repercussions come, they will suffer. They will suffer. That's it. That's a different.
I want you said there is a straightforward answer to this question, and then there is a complex, and then there's a third one, and I don't know under what category you put that back. Put that under either cultural or sociological. Quickly, because you're the guest. There's a third reason why Indians have not migrated away from the PPP. Because when you look at the WPA and what they become, Hines, Ogunse, Wickford Burke, when you look at the PNC and you're an Indian, it scares you. It scares you because there is serious derogation, scandalization, and bad mouthing of Indian leaders, Indian people within their own ranks. There has been no rejection by Nigel Hughes and the PNC of what Burke and Hines and Takuma Ogunse says. Just before Craig comes in, let me remind you what Ogunse says. The black people say they're discriminated. And then with the people with the guns, the police, the soldiers have the guns. You use those guns, story done. You could imagine, and you think Indian people are stupid? If you say black people have the guns and you use the guns, who they're using the guns against? Arabs? Pakistanis?
No,
no, but it has shown that we, as much some politicians may want to politicize it, it is indicative that we are evolving as a society. Gradually, we are evolving in a positive direction as a society. And coming back to my complex answer on the question, is that you have that small group who are prepared to put the country at risk, and because of that, to a larger extent, the rest of the population, not necessarily a particular ethnic group, but the rest of the population who will support and vote for the PPPC, they have to do so to prevent that risk from happening, because they know we have a smart population of people. They know what the risk is. They're not going to risk their future.
We have a population.
I'm not going to risk my future.
We have a population, and when you look back 20, 25 years and where we are today, we ain't going back there, man. Yeah. And who else knows that better than me?
Exactly.
Who taught at the university with 26 years that didn't have printing paper? Leonard Craig.
Yeah. Staying on political issues.
So Joel still has his political cap on.
Yeah. But before I go there, let's deal with something that is current. It came out last night on Travis Chase that he saw some lists. And it got ministers and senior policemen and all of that on this list.
To be sanctioned.
Yes, to be sanctioned. And everybody, the who is who of the opposition, I've seen they've gone to the cleaners on it. What do you make of it? Just your free flowing thoughts. What do you make of it?
Two contrasting things. One, that came out immediately after, virtually immediately after, a couple hours after, a disastrous WIN press conference in which they presented what purports to be a manifesto, and that has been skewered for its unoriginality, for its internal contradictions, and of course for the inability of the leader, the presidential candidate, to answer questions. And of course the other...
Shortly. Soon, we're coming to that.
No.
Shortly, soon, we're coming to that.
I remember
you'll hear from that.
There's a clip with the party general...
That's his Pavlovian response.
The party general... There are two things. A clip with the party general secretary being asked very basic question. You're saying that you're going to supplement the gas to shore with wind energy, etc. What is the calculation of the electricity needs to justify this? And it was a blank.
Yeah, it wasn't blank. My description is they were lost. They looked lost, constipated, and confused.
I don't think the people that fall in this man knows how empty he is.
So essentially,
that is what is killing me.
So you had that coming out, that thing coming out just after. So people are now talking about this sanction list as opposed to the disastrous press conference.
So they obfuscate the disaster of the press conference by running with this thing,
with the sanction list.
Yeah.
So it's PR, etc. I mean, if it is that this is happening, but the second thing I want to contrast that with is that I think the biodiversity conference, and this is relative. The U.S. ambassador, when asked about the possibility of Mohammed on the list, said very clearly, well, this would be a problem for us.
Yeah.
That is not the response of a diplomat who is aware of and who should have been aware of the same thing happening to the existing government. Understand?
Yeah.
If this diplomat knew for a fact that there were going to be sanctioned people on the government list, then she would have shut up, because her response was, you know what, things are going so well now, there's confidence in the thing. It would be a shame if
that were to change,
if a sanctioned person were part of government, we wouldn't be able to right? So she spoke to continuity, and she would be somebody who would know if this thing were to come.
But my problem with the PNC, the AFC, since David Hines and Takuma Gonse came on the scene, is that you have to disassociate yourself. Now, Travis Chase got this thing and run with it. As a responsible party, Nigel Hughes is a lawyer. You got to know how to contextualize these people that exist on the fringe.
No, but you see.
No. It's calculated. So sorry. Let me just
What
connect a
happened
few
next week
things.
when it turned out not to be true?
Let me just connect a few things. So it is consistent with a narrative that he is trying to create, and it's a false narrative, and we have to dispel it. The narrative he's trying to create is, every time posed with a question of sanction, how will that impact international relations and our relationship with the rest of the world? He keeps saying that with conviction, a false sense of conviction, that the sanctions will be lifted. If he becomes
The president.
the president, that the sanction will be lifted. Now that is also consistent with our own prediction by the vice president, that he's only, and we know this, that he's only doing this to save his ass. But he's trying to create this narrative now, okay, with this false conviction that the sanction will be lifted. He made reference to some Syrian prince that Trump, that Trump lifted the sanction and said that the man is handsome. So trying to equate himself with that. That's a completely different.
That has politics in it.
That is a
No, no, no,
completely.
that
Is a completely different.
That wasn't a financial
That's a
sanction for
completely
committing
different.
corrupt
Yeah,
transactions.
and they keep referencing Modi.
Modi,
They keep,
yeah.
Same thing with Modi, yeah.
And the travel restriction with our president.
Geopolitics allow for these
It's-
things. He's the
exactly.
normal financial crime
It's,
accusation against him.
It's apple and oranges. It's completely, vastly different. So he doesn't understand these things, but he's painting this narrative to say, well, this is going to be lifted. He's trying to, in a way, they went to Barbados. There is this view out there that he tried to cut some deal when he went to Barbados. And then he dropped this propaganda. I saw he made a post. He took ownership of it. He took ownership of it on the Team Mohammed page. Post on the Team Mohammed page when Travis says, put that out. So that tells me there is a connection there. That points me in the direction that he's trying to create a narrative that he has some kind of counterintelligence and he is working to reverse with the US authorities. It's a false narrative that he's trying to create. It's clearly a false narrative that he's trying to create.
But I want to get to what Freddie asked. Why is it that a supposedly responsible opposition
Would run with something that the lunatic fringe
because what
It serves their interest.
There's a term
it damages their credibility.
there's an American tech term that is found widely usage, in which they say it's not a bug. It's something that is supposed to
Is really interest free, not low interest rate.
Yeah, but,
Is really interest free, not low interest rate.
yeah, because they have the
Because
interest rebate.
you got a
scheme
mortgage
going on.
interest relief,
Yeah.
which is for first-time homeowners.
Yeah,
First-time
yeah.
homeowners, tax-paying homeowners. You pay, you're an employee, you're paying your tax up to date. You're eligible for mortgage interest relief. So at the end of the year, you apply for it at GRA. You go to the bank, you get your statement, and
And you get
100% of the interest you pay
Interest
for a low-income house at today's value. On the lower end, your annual interest is about $600,000. So it's interest-free. It's not low interest rate. It's
It's
interest-free loan.
So Elson Lowe is still the economic advisor to
And
is he?
well.
How he advising out and that
No, but-
and not made such a
but that essentially
Yeah.
is a rent-to-own scheme, because for the period of time you owe the bank owns your home until you finish. So your monthly thing is a rent you pay.
Right. And
Right,
if-
but Morgan, but
yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that has replaced rent to own in every country on earth for the longest
Yes,
while.
well.
So they're taking us back into the 60s and 70s, and I don't know how these
isn't
people don't
Elson Lowe the
understand it.
isn't he the economic advisor to
well, let me deal with that.
To be fair to Elson,
Let me deal
I
with
think
some
he
more.
gets a lot of flack for because he's not
he
qualified.
Nelson came out for 20
No,
years?
let's deal with some more economics on the same policy, right?
But you got
On the same rent to own thing, right? So let's take the rent to own. You can pay a rent for let's say 20 years, equated to the life of a loan, 20 years. With the interest-free loan, there is something called time value for money. So when you pay interest on a loan, over 20 years, you end up paying double the price.
Yeah.
You end up paying double the price that you acquired the home for over the life of the loan. You get an interest-free loan. All you're paying is that value, time value for money. So when you can put that against a rent-to-own thing, you paying interest. You eventually will pay double the cost for that home over that period, because the way it will be structured, it will have an implicit interest rate in it.
Yes.
The rent will have an implicit interest rate.
Tied in.
The operator said 1.5 minutes left. Okay. So I'll ask Leonard Craig to ask both of you the same question, and you take it in 1.5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Sum up for me what you visualize the results of this election would be.
Okay. For me, it's a floating thing, but I believe that
the floating thing.
It's a floating assessment, but I believe that the PPP, everything considered, could easily surpass that 36 majority that it got in 2006, I believe. Right? They had a 36, and this is the peak we ever had in terms of a party getting the high votes. I think they can go to 38, perhaps the
that would have to be 2001.
2001.
Yeah, but 2006 when AFC
it's
came
it's 2001.
Yeah, AFC was in 2006, and it took seats from both PNC and PPP.
Yeah,
It's
so
2001.
36. Yeah, 2001. It was a 36 seat peak.
Yeah, then after we had the Buxton thing. Yeah.
Good. So, that's my assessment. But what I'd say, shameless plug, you'll find that floating assessment and more on inside www.inside.gy, and all of you are free to.
Joel, you're not.
I'm not gonna.
30 seconds.
I'm not gonna pin it on. I'm not gonna pin it on to number of seats. But but I'll say with confidence that the PPP will win these elections. I also want to say that I want to take this opportunity to dispel this notion by the Team Mohammed party that is crying victimization by the government. If the government wanted to really victimize this entity, this individual and his party, the government is empowered. Legally, the government has the legal tools to, when that OFAC sanction was announced, to freeze all of his assets, financial assets.
The operator said we 1 minute over time.
Instead, they allowed him to close his accounts and take away all his money. And he went on and do what he did. Now, if you are a threat to me, and I have this legal empowerment, this legal tool that I could have used to cripple you, but I didn't do it, how could you call that victimization?
Where we gotta go. I want to do this panel again with a fifth person, Elson Lowe. Last time he Elson Lowe here, they tore off. Joel, you're a recurring feature on this program. We hope to see you before September the 2nd again. Well, it's always nice to have you.
Yeah, man.
And thanks for being here as usual. He's always late, you know. Whatever is left of Friday evening, please enjoy it and enjoy your weekend. And please drive safely on the road. And keep your eye out about the interesting things evolving before we reach September the 1st. A very, very pleasant weekend to you on behalf of Joel Bhagwandin, Ruel Johnson, and Leonard Craig. Bye-bye.